it's going to be very hard to separate yourself from your phone.
How do you implement the idea of social media ban for a larger audience?
The social media ban is going to be rolled out at some point. We're waiting for the Minister for Communication to tell us when it's going to happen. The fact that adults think that social media and phone use is a bad thing for young people, whereas it's something like 80% of 14 to 17-year-olds in Australia say that social media and phone use has a positive impact on their life. I hope that the social media ban will help to reduce some of those harms, but I worry that all of the positive impacts of social media are also going to be taken away, and that these young people are going to be left feeling disconnected, anxious, and frankly a bit overwhelmed with what do I do now?
Young people can access, sexualized content in different ways, form, the online porn world doesn't just, is accessible to almost everybody.
Their first interaction with porn is it's just come across their feed. They weren't looking for it. It has come to them. It's found them. I think that having open conversations about it is one of the best ways that we can tackle this problem. If I was told that I would no longer be able to access social media, I'd be angry. I'd be frustrated, a little bit grateful, little small part of me would be like, oh, thank God you've taken this away from me so I don't have to keep policing myself.
Yeah.
First of all, I'd be angry and frustrated, and I'd want to know why.
Before we get started, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode of our cutting-edge contemporary conversations. Thank you.
Welcome, Paris. How are you?
Really well, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for your time today, and so glad to be having this conversation on this important topic. But before we talk about your background, before your work in social media side of it and your work with young people, could you give us your background and in life till now?
Absolutely.
What you've been up to?
So I left school eager, bright-eyed, and I went to study law at Curtin. I really, really loved studying law. I did really well, loved the study of it. And then I went and I worked for a judge at the State Administrative Tribunal, which I also loved. But it was through that I learned that while I loved studying law, I didn't want to practice law, which is a pretty common revelation that law students come to these days. But what it taught me was that while I had figured out that I wanted to make an impact, the law wasn't the right vessel for that. And so I thought back over my life, and there were little clues and breadcrumbs about the way that I might want to go with my career. And I looked back, and throughout my university studies and throughout high school, I had been giving presentations. I'd been so passionate about attending leadership camps, workshops, developing myself and sharing that knowledge with other young people. So I went out on a limb and I started my own public speaking workshop facilitation business. And so now I run workshops for young people, primarily speaking in schools and with local governments and with young professionals about leadership topics, about the things that matter to young people right now. And the golden thread that runs through all of the work that I do is helping young people to think differently. So that's how I got to where I am now.
That's a big purpose. Think differently. In terms of that golden thread you were talking about, that's what you want to achieve and purpose. In terms of the speaking and presenting and public speaking to start with, what are the key tenets of somebody starting and picking up and saying, yes, I want to be a public speaker tomorrow? And specifically for a young person, what are the things they need to be thinking of in terms of capturing that skill set? Because if somebody has not done that for a larger audience or a smaller audience, either ways, what do they start with?
I would suggest starting with getting comfortable speaking one-on-one, like we're doing today, because public speaking is just private speaking. Good public speakers make you feel like they are speaking just to you. The way that you can do that is by thinking about your presentations and building engagement. So put the content to the side. Everyone is so excited to rush into the content of what you want to share, what learnings you want to give to your audience, but think about how you're going to engage them. If you're speaking to young people in a school, let's say, that's a really tough crowd to engage, teenagers, with educational content. If you're speaking at a conference for professionals, they're busy, they're on their phone. That's a tough crowd too. You've got to figure out a way to grasp their attention and then to hold it. And that can be through playing games, telling stories, having audience participation, getting people to raise their hands, vote in polls, but design your presentation with the engagement in mind.
And if you are, as a young person, the most probably there's another set of crowd which you don't want to present to is probably more difficult crowd. Sorry, not a difficult crowd would be if you want to be a comedian in a club and then you want to present to an audience people who are having a good time Friday evening or Saturday evening in a club which is dark and everybody's looking at you and then there's a light on to you and you want to be a comedian, you want to make people laugh. I think probably that's the biggest difficult form of public speaking, I would say so, for me. For somebody who want to build up to that kind of a skill set, to be interactive with the audience, pick up on the audience and ask them questions and then get a feedback and then get them feel happy and then start laughing out loud. So how do you build those kind of skills?
It's a hard ask, but and that's what a lot of people recommend when you ask coaches, how do I get better at public speaking? I think it's two-part because they say go and try your hand at stand-up comedy is one of the ways that they tell you to get better at public speaking. And I think there are two parts to it. One, you have to actually get out of your comfort zone. Not many people would be willing to try their hand at stand-up comedy.
No.
And so that's a really, really big step of you putting yourself out there into the world with material that you've written that you don't know if it's going to land. So there's the putting yourself out of your comfort zone, getting comfortable talking to people and being rejected if your joke doesn't land. And then I think the second part to it is getting into the mindset of thinking really cleverly about your audience and about how you can pivot on the fly. So with good public speaking, you could write the best presentation ever, but if you don't know the context of what's going on, if I go into a school and something tragic has happened, and if I don't know that context and I start talking about a really sensitive topic, then it doesn't matter how good my presentation is, it's not going to land.
And from a point of view of every generation had different, things happen to them, from boomers to Gen X, Gen Ys, and all of those things. When you are thinking of, as you said, thinking differently and how to think differently from a point of view of what you want to do in your life and how do you want to engage with things. So how do you think this generation is different than the previous ones? What is different?
I'm a Gen Z, and so I think that every generation gets a bad rap from the ones that have come before. Gen Zs are no different. I think what is different about Gen Z is how we've grown up so immersed in technology, not just a little bit, but that it's entirely our life, that we have developed this dependence on our phone for social connection. And I think that hinders a lot of young people because they don't feel confident to go out and to make new friends in real life, that people aren't going to a bar and asking someone out on a date, that we aren't putting ourselves out there and stepping outside our comfort zone because we have the security of the online world. I think it's changed the way that we think about challenge and how we both communicate and push ourselves to do hard things.
If the whole ecosystem as you grew up had more technology around it, so what are the challenges it brings to being, too much technology in your life? Because my generation, I think I'm Gen X probably, I'm 84 born, but if you are, I have seen both without and with tech, two parts of the life, so I understand the difference. But whereas, as you said, you grew with technology, so you don't not see in other ways or not understand. So how do you, from that point of view, how do you bring yourself out of it? Because I have seen both sides. If you haven't seen both sides, you've seen only one side, how it will be more challenging to come out of it.
And I really resonate with that too. My mum kept a baby book for me, documenting all my milestones, and she's written in there, today Paris copied the sound of the dial-up internet. So as a baby, I made that noise. So I've seen a range of technology, but I had a laptop at 3. I had the iPad when it came out. I was 10. I had a smartphone and social media at 13. So it has been a really big part of my life for good and for bad. I think for younger Gen Zs as well, I'm at the top end of this generation, and for the Gen Alphas that are coming up, it's going to be very hard to separate yourself from your phone, which is why I'm so passionate about talking and raising awareness about the upcoming social media ban, because I think that young people are going to have a really hard time, especially the ones that are under 16 at the moment, who have been on social media, who have created their life and their identity online, to have that ripped away and to have to go cold turkey. I think it's going to be very, very difficult for them.
Can you just elaborate on the idea of what's the social media ban, and before what the ban is, why it came into being, and what happened from an advocacy point of view? What did the community demanded from the politicians? Why was the reason to bring it in first place?
So when I was 13, I wanted to get Instagram. I was probably 12 at the time, actually. I hadn't turned 13 yet. And to make an Instagram account, you need to put your birthday in and you need to prove you're at least 13. What did we do? You just make yourself a year older, you choose a different birthday. You log in, all good, you're set to go. The government had received a lot of information from a lot of different stakeholders, a lot of advocacy bodies, a lot of parents and young people as well, saying that's not going to be good enough anymore. What the social media ban is changing that age, that minimum age that you're allowed to create or use a social media account, raising that from 13 to 16. And the ban has come about because there's so much harmful stuff on social media and young people are being exposed to it. It's not necessarily that they're seeking it out, but rather that it's being pushed to them by these algorithms that favour this really harmful, violent, sexual and inappropriate content because it creates more engagement. So the social media ban has come about as the government's answer to that, to try and reduce some of the harms that social media creates for young people because their brains haven't fully developed. They don't have the resilience, the critical thinking skills, and I suppose the mental fortitude to deal with that and to make informed choices about their social media use. I think that 16 is a pretty good age where we can start making decisions, we can start driving. And so I think that gives us and gives young people a little bit more chance to develop without being exposed to all of those harms online.
And so how will the whole challenge will be probably because you have a blanket number. How do you implement the idea of social media ban for a larger audience? So what is the plan there?
So that's the question that I get asked most about the social media ban. How is it going to be enforced? What's it going to look like? How is it going to affect my child? How is it going to affect me? The social media ban is going to be rolled out at some point. We're waiting for the Minister for Communication to tell us when it's going to happen. The very earliest it could be is December 2025. It'll probably be a little bit later. And what the government is doing is they've put the responsibility completely on the social media companies. So they said, you need to figure out a way to make sure that anyone under 16 is not able to access your platforms. And if you don't, big penalties are going to apply. there's no responsibility being placed on parents, only what the parents want to do, I suppose. So the parents aren't the big bad wolf where they have to enforce and say, no, social media is bad for you. No, we don't want you to have a phone. It's all the responsibility going on those big multi-billion-dollar platforms. The way that it's going to be enforced is also up in the air. We don't know yet. But each platform might do it a little bit differently. So we're still waiting to hear how it's actually going to be rolled out, and that could be different from Meta to TikTok to any of the other platforms. Snapchat might be different as well. There's two main ways that they've said that they want to trial this kind of technology. The first is by uploading some kind of government ID where you prove your age, that you are over 16. If that were to happen, I'd have to prove my age, you'd have to prove your age, my grandma would have to prove her age by uploading some form of ID to these social media platforms, and then we'd be able to get back online. And I'd imagine that the young people who can't prove they're 16 would then just not be able to log in until the time that they can. The other way is by using facial recognition software. So the government have done a pilot about facial recognition and being able to judge someone's age based on that. The findings haven't come out, and I'm not really convinced that that's going to be an effective way of policing whether someone is or is not 16, especially because you can, if your birthday was today, you can't get on social media yesterday, but you can today. How is facial recognition going to pick up that difference as well? So there's lots of questions floating around still about the social media ban, and we'll have to wait and see as the government releases more information.
And from a point of view of, if we go on the other pathway, which is more what you're saying, that one solution is have everybody upload ID, a government ID. How comfortable are you with that process in terms of, sharing your information about your date of birth, name, and as you know, there are so much ID theft happening in the world, to a foreign entity which can have database wherever they want to, but a foreign organization controlling your database and a private commercial-driven organization?
I'm in two minds about it, because on one hand, I think to myself, well, they already have all my information anyway, that I freely give them by accessing their platforms. But on the other hand, I can completely appreciate why no one would want to give Meta their driver's license. One way that I've seen the US try and tackle this, there's a new law that was passed maybe There's a new law in Utah that was passed in the middle of May 2025, where they required the app stores to be the ones that verified ID. So Google Play and the Apple Store were the facilitators, I suppose. So you upload your ID once to a fairly trusted company, Apple and Google, and then they use an AI tool. It's called zero knowledge proofs, where basically you give them your ID, they record that, and then they distribute out to the other apps and say, yes, they're 16, no, they're not. They don't pass your ID on. They just tell them, we've ticked the box, yes, they are, no, they're not. So I think that could be potentially a really good way of doing it, that a lot of people would feel more comfortable with if, for example, Apple and Google were able to link up with the MyGov digital ID scheme, so that even maybe you've uploaded your information to MyGov, to the digital ID scheme, and then they get a tick box answer, yes, they're 18, yes, they're 16, no, they're not, so that then even Google and Apple don't hold your ID, and then they can distribute out to the other platforms. But I'm not sure that that's going to be enough to actually meet the requirements of our legislation either, because the platforms have to take all reasonable steps to ensure that young people aren't online. And that raises a question of, well, can they just log into their parents' Apple account and have it downloaded on their device? Lots of questions still to be answered.
How much does parental responsibility come into play in this one? because some parents might want to, police by themselves. They say, okay, I will not give you won't have a cell phone until the age of 16, or, you will have only they're calling it dumb phones these days, that the old phones are coming back. So how is that, why do you think parents are more anxious to tell that, to take away phone or take away social media from their own kids?
I think that the parental responsibility plays a huge part in this and in the well-being of kids more generally. And when I speak with schools about social media, they say we have so many problems with social media, and phones are banned at schools. They're not allowed to have them in class. They're meant to be in their lockers and away. But they have the fallout of all of these issues that happen on social media late at night, when these young people are staying up really late, messaging each other, where they don't have the resilience or the critical thinking skills because they're sleep deprived, and then these nasty comments and problematic behaviour happens. For a lot of parents, I think that they just don't know and don't know how to. And it's a really delicate balance of making sure that your child feels included, but that you're protecting them online as well. So if for example, a child says, I want to get Snapchat, I'm 13 now, I want to get Snapchat, all my friends are on Snapchat, and the parent says, no, you can't have it, the reality is that often that child is then excluded, and they're missing out on connecting with their friends in the way that their friends do. They feel left out. They might not get invited to things. And as a parent, I'm sure that would be a really difficult decision and process to balance those two concerns. But that's not to understate the importance of knowing what your kids are looking at online as well, because there is so much stuff out there and it can escalate really quickly, even to the extent that, let's say there's a friend of mine, she's got a toddler, right? She puts the iPad in front of the toddler when she's making dinner and watching Peppa Pig on YouTube. All good. The 2-year-old can get Peppa Pig up itself, can actually do the process, but autoplay is on YouTube. And so after a few episodes of normal Peppa Pig, the mum comes over, my friend comes over, and she sees that her child is watching zombie Peppa Pig, and it's not age appropriate for a 2-year-old to be watching quite horrific, violent Peppa Pig content. So I think that parents need to be trying to police a little bit more. And Jonathan Haidt, in his book, The Anxious Generation, he talks about how we are over-parenting in the real world. Kids aren't going outside, climbing trees, falling over, scraping their knees, going to the shops by themselves. But we're under-parenting
in the social world,
in the online world, that you send them out. You wouldn't send them out into a dark alley by themselves, but that's what they're doing on the internet. And I'm very conscious that I'm not a parent, and I don't claim to understand the difficult decisions that parents have to make and to balance all these considerations. But I think it is really valuable coming from a young person that has lived through that social media experience, particularly growing up with it at school, being excluded from things because I didn't have Facebook until I was 16, not getting invited to events for that reason. Also seeing really harmful content that shaped my perception, I suppose. When I jumped on Instagram at the first stage, it was a lot of the channels were very, there was a lot of pro-eating disorder content as well, that it's not something that I sought out. It was fed to me by those early algorithms as well. And that does play into your perception, but parents don't know. And even one example I can give is I was at the MCG for the Boxing Day test, and a couple seats in front of me down the row, there was
May I tell you that was a good test, the Boxing Day test. A good fun test. But anyways, continue.
Yeah, it was a great day. So I'm sitting in the stands at the MCG, and one row in front of me, there's a girl and her parents. She must have been maybe 13. She's not watching cricket. She doesn't care about cricket. She's scrolling on TikTok. Scrolling, and I can kind of peer over and see over her shoulder. She is watching eating disorder content after eating disorder content after eating disorder content. It's just being fed to her. And some of it is kind of hidden in like this is what I eat in a day for a healthy diet, but it's not. And her parents are next to her and have no idea what she's seeing. So I think there is a role in parents trying to step up with a little bit more awareness and a little bit more interest in what their children are watching in particular.
As I think off the camera, I was telling you, I know of a friend of mine who has a similar experience. He had a young girl who didn't had intellectual disability and was exposed to a lot of eating disorder content, and eventually he lost his little daughter to all of that, and it was harrowing for a father to go through that process. And then, like, I can see that, when you are pigeonholed into one kind of content and just plays on to you, that's what you see, that's what your reality becomes, and that's what you start behaving, and it takes over your decisions in a normal life. And young people who are, as you said, not mature in terms of the way they think, very easily cajoled into wronger ways. And then kids with disabilities, they are more further, not in a great space to do this. So how do you see that deeper understanding of most of the parents who are okay or probably might be comfortable kids to have social media, which is happening right now? How difficult is that conversation or that mindset of a parent first before the child? Before you enforce how does you bring that mindset from a parent's point of view?
I'm not a parent, so I can't really answer that directly. But what I can say is that from what I've seen, from what my parents tell me, most parents, first and foremost, their love is for the child, and they want to give the child the best experience that they possibly can, protect them from harms, and to give them the best chance at life. And I think that really does come now with increasing your awareness of what's online and what they can be accessing, and trying to have conversations with your young person about it. Because when I speak to young people, they say to me, adults don't get it. They don't understand what it's like to have grown up with social media. They don't understand what I'm using it for. When we talk about the social media ban, they just say, it's for your own good. And that really shuts down the conversation and doesn't create an open dialogue, because especially if we're talking about teenagers, that's when you start keeping things back from your parents. If you can try and encourage that open dialogue, then I think it'll make it a little bit easier to then continue the conversation. The Netflix series Adolescence, I think, really brought that to light, where the protagonist, the child, was exposed to some fairly radicalized content, misogynistic content in the manosphere, and the parents had no idea. And at the very end of the series, the parents are crying together and they say, well, we couldn't have done anything more. But then it ends and they say, but could we? Could we have done more? I think that it's really important for parents to have a look at their own tech use habits when they're trying to have these conversations. If you're trying to talk to your young person about their screen time, you're always on your phone. Also have the self-awareness to think about, well, are you always checking your emails on your phone? Are you on your phone at dinner? Are you accepting work calls? Because young people are clever and they're going to pick up on that. If you've got a double standard and are telling them to get off their phone, then they're going to look at you and the example that you're setting as well, which is really tricky. But if parents are really wanting to bring their child back to the real world, I suppose, then Strategies like setting meal times, sitting at the table as a family without phones, set a time, even set a room in the house where there's no phones or technology, having activities that you can do, because a lot of young people have either not learnt or have forgotten how to have fun in real life and how to engage with other people. So help them, give them activities to do, set things up for them, organise with the other parents that all the kids are going to go to the park and are going to try rollerblading or something on the weekend. Try and facilitate it and get that process underway.
To have that, as you said, open conversation, because, and then, as you said, young people typically feel that people don't understand them. So what are the challenges, for example, beyond saying, okay, it's good for you, if somebody as a parent want to have that conversation, what are the typical responses young people are giving to you when you're having those conversations in your sessions? What are they saying that why are they using for social media in terms of at a younger age, beyond catching up with friends?
So young people, there's a real disconnect between what adults think young people use social media for and what young people think about social media. And there's also a disconnect between whether, I suppose, the fact that adults think that social media and phone use is a bad thing for young people, whereas it's something like 80% of 14 to 17-year-olds in Australia say that social media and phone use has a positive impact on their life. Whereas if you ask most adults, they would say, no, it would have a negative impact. So we've got a disconnect there. Australian teens, most of them will tell you that it makes them feel more connected to their friends. Most of them will tell you that it's where they have a sense of identity. A lot of them have created an online presence. It's where they store their memories. A lot of young people have their photos on Snapchat memories, for example. That's different to adults. And a lot of young people say it helps them to feel more included because they can stay up to date with what's happening in their friend's life.
Okay.
Some also use it for creative pursuits, the people who are actually creating content, getting inspiration about new hobbies, staying up to date with current events. Most young people don't watch the news, but they might follow a platform like the Daily Oz and get some of that new media information coming through to them. So there's a lot of positive ways that young people use social media, and I think that that's been left out of the conversation to date. We've been talking about the harms, the cyberbullying, the harmful sexualized content, which, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of it, and that is really mainstream as well. I think it's something like 62% of 14 to 17-year-olds have seen violent, harmful or sexualized content on the internet. There's a lot of that, and I hope that the social media ban will help to reduce some of those harms, but I worry that all of the positive impacts of social media, the positive ways that they use it, are also going to be taken away, and that these young people are going to be left feeling disconnected, anxious, and frankly a bit overwhelmed with, what do I do now?
That equation of mental health, broader anxiety has increased across all generations these days. And if the biggest reason is to stay connected to, when somebody has, if I have anxiety, or I think the biggest typically is suggested that you go and sit with the family, my friends, have a conversation, share your story out and feel connected. And connection creates a very strong reason to come back out of bad mental health. It's part of the story, not the whole story of it, to bring you back from depression or anxiety. So why because if somebody's using social media to feel connected, at the same time might have anxiety also. So is the anxiety because, how can we have that? Is that a bit of an oxymoron?
My take on it is that both can be true. So young people are using social media to feel more connected, and without social media, they're going to feel disconnected. At the same time, young people are more anxious than ever and are feeling lonelier than ever. I think both can be true at the same time. And the tricky situation we're in is that for young people that have grown up not knowing anything else except social media and really having that as their primary way of connecting with other people outside of school hours, is that they don't know how to make friends in real life.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
They're not comfortable being bored, and they're not willing a lot of the time to try something new because they are so anxious and so fearful of stepping out of their comfort zone. They're fearing failure. One young person that I spoke to about trying something new, he said, "But could you guarantee that I would feel better if I did it?" And I said, "Well, no, I can't guarantee that. That's up to you. But trying something new is your best shot at feeling better." And so there seems to be this unwillingness to try and learn these in-person skills that we know that science tells us can bring you out of those anxious thoughts, because there's this easier option that gives us lower quality connection, but there's still connection there. And I can do it where I feel safe and comfortable, in the comfort of my own home, whenever I please. Whereas going out and meeting someone new, that's scary. That's really hard. They could reject me. I'll take the easier option. I think we're in a real pickle here where young people need to build those skills and need to practice them, because I think we're going to have a real crisis when these young people get into the workforce and are so petrified of trying something new or ask or receive critical feedback and can't handle it, that we're really lacking in resilience.
And as you see in the corporate world, if you want to grow on a career path, you always have to manage more people, and which forces you to interact with more people. If you don't want to be a manager, then if you want to be an individual who's working on a project by himself or herself, you don't need to interact with many if you are that kind of a role. But if you want to grow in a career path, you have to have more interaction, more team meetings, more going out with your colleagues, and then understanding everybody's situation and scenario. So I think probably you are on the right track on that way, that it'll be more challenging for people to be in those scenarios. So in terms of that, the graphic content you were talking about, how does that impact longer term? Because we have seen in the past many scenarios when young people or people generally can be radicalized through, watching a kind of content and go through that rabbit holing into just, going further deep and deep. So how do you see that impacting in general sense from an anxiety point of view as well?
I think it even goes broader than just that real radical content. That's on one end, but there's a whole range of content that we still shouldn't necessarily be exposed to at the rate that we are. There's a side of the Instagram and TikTok algorithm that you can end up on where it's CCTV footage of people getting injured, but oftentimes it's the film might stop before the person is actually injured, but the content that's coming up is people dying because of traffic accidents, construction accidents, and if you're on that side of the algorithm, you can scroll, and I know people who have said, okay, how many scrolls will it take for me to see someone die online, essentially? 1, 2, 3, there we go, there's CCTV of someone getting injured to the extent that they might die from their injuries. That low-level, harmful content
Micro
affects all of us. And the algorithms are really powerful because they send you down those rabbit holes and feed you back through an echo chamber. So we're not getting exposed to a broad range of views, of content, of ideas, which I think leads us to almost not exercising our critical thinking skills, because if I'm on that side of TikTok, I think everyone is seeing that. But that's not true. Everyone is seeing completely different things based on their screen use.
Yeah.
Something that you might not know is Instagram actually has a feature where you can reset your algorithm. So that's a really good tip if you've found yourself on some kind of rabbit hole.
You can reset it.
Yeah, if you've managed to, if you searched up one crocheting video and now you only have crocheting videos and you are sick of crocheting, then you can reset that and start from scratch. And that can be a really useful tool if you've ended up somewhere that you don't want to be.
But from a point of view of large organization, their incentive is to the longer you stay on the platform, the more ads they can run and more money they. So if the incentive is to make money on the one side, and then why would not rabbit holing come back again and again and again? Yes, it's a good idea to reset, and it's a very good one. I'm not seeing that in TikTok or other platforms, so which is good. But how do you create that? Stop and then play and then watch some content and say take a break. How do you create those internal processes to make sure that you keep on thinking critically the way you want to, and then just stay away from what you've been fed? How can you still watch it, still spend the time what you want to spend, but still see that I might be in an echo chamber. I want to stay out of it and still think differently and then go other sources of information if you are looking for information.
I think that's really tricky to do, and it requires space and not getting caught in that doom scroll cycle. I think the ways that you can create space are by creating physical space as well. And you get stuck in that rabbit hole. All of us do. That's why the social media ban is important for young people under 16 as well, because they don't have that fully developed prefrontal cortex that can help them to identify, I'm in this, I want to get out of it, or I'm going to watch this but consider other views. They don't have the skills to do that at that young age. And so by giving them 3 extra years to develop some of that, when they then see something that they need to either fact check or maybe get another opinion on, they'll have a better chance at doing that. In order to give yourself space, I like to use app timers. So on both Apple and Android devices, you can set a time. And if you've said, I want to spend no more than an hour on social media a day, I want 20 minutes on TikTok, 20 on Instagram and 20 on Snapchat, you can set timers for each of those and it'll kick you off once you've used up your time. I find that helpful because it just gives you that stop. The reminder, okay, I said to myself I would come off now. You can add a bit more time if you want to, but it does give you that reminder. Button. Yeah, exactly.
But still you have to get up in the morning. You can snooze how many times you would snooze, but yeah, I think that's a good tool. Thank you for sharing that. And how does that the ban plays within the realm of the online gaming world? When people are online and playing and talking to people across the world, and it's still social media in some way or form. So how, is that included or excluded from the ban?
At the moment, it's included, but the government have said they intend to make an exception for gaming platforms. So things like Discord would, as it's currently written, fall within the social media ban. The government has said that they're going to make an exception for messaging platforms, so Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, those kinds of things. They said gaming platforms and for platforms that have a predominant educational or health purpose. So if you think about Strava, the running or fitness app, you can like, you can comment, you can post photos. So there's an element of social media there. So it might get caught up in the ban unless these exceptions get made, because it's predominantly a fitness app. So they would make an exception for that. If gaming platforms do get an exception, then there's every chance that young people will come off social media and go straight to gaming platforms and to YouTube, because YouTube is technically within the social media ban, so you can't make an account, use your account, so you won't be able to like, subscribe, comment or upload a video.
But still watch.
But you can watch without logging in, just on a browser. So I'm worried isn't the right word, but a little bit concerned about what young people are going to do when they go cold turkey on social media. They're going to have all this time now. And if we're not in front of them as parents, as schools, as people in local governments running programs, if we're not in front of them at that critical point in time, I don't think the social media ban will have as big as an effect as it could, because they'll just fill that time with Netflix, YouTube, and gaming.
As you said, young people are smart. They've grown with technology. They understand the idea of VPNs and stuff. So how does a social media ban is implementable if there are VPNs available to access social media?
You're spot on. And a lot of people say, well, why should I care about the social media ban? Because kids are going to get around it. And I agree. Kids are smart and they will find a way. VPNs might be one. But my view is that even if 50%, let's say, of young people are off social media or have reduced their social media usage, if we can get them doing something else, let's say a group of friends at school, they haven't found a loophole, they're off social media. They are organised to go to the park and throw a frisbee every Tuesday afternoon. If you were the one child in that friendship group that had a VPN, what would you prefer to do? Would you prefer to be scrolling through reels, or would you want to hang out with your friends at the park? I would love, and I'm still so optimistic about the fact that kids will want to be where their friends are. They like social media because that's where their friends are, where their community is, where they feel included. And so if we can support them to find a better alternative, like hanging out in person, then my hope is that even if they find a way around it, it's going to be less exciting online anyway, and they'll reduce their usage.
And from a point of view of accessing not just the on gaming and the social media and all of that, when young people can access sexualized content in different ways, form. The online porn world doesn't just is accessible to almost everybody. Sorry, not almost everybody. How does that work in the play of social media ban? Because people don't need to have a social media account for that accessing pornographic websites or content. So how do you see that playing?
So the social media ban won't affect that. But the e-safety commissioner has put out some commentary. They're working on a policy standpoint to address that, because most young people in Australia, their first interaction with porn is it's just come across their feed. They weren't looking for it. It has come to them. It's found them. And that's not okay. That's basically it being unsolicited. It's come across their eyeballs and they've seen it. So the government is working on tightening those regulations in a separate piece of legislation, but we'll have to see how that plays out as well. That's still in the works. I think that having open conversations about it is one of the best ways that we can tackle this problem, because if it's secretive and it's something that is shameful that we're not talking about, then the problem's going to continue behind closed doors. Whereas if parents, schools, external facilitators like myself can come in and have a conversation with young people about these tricky and taboo topics and bring some normality and normalise it a little bit, then I think it could be less stigmatised and less harmful, and we might be able to figure out some ways to regulate it.
From a point of view of, because I don't think so, if somebody is creating profiles on dating apps, so is that also part of the whole scope of things? Or because people can create profiles, as you said, when you were creating a profile and the age can be anything, you can just scroll up and down, and how do you manage that kind of a...
I believe that most of the dating apps have a minimum age higher than it might be 16, but I think it's a little bit higher. And so I think they have the same issue that a 13-year-old can create a Tinder account just by putting in a different birth date.
Yeah.
That won't fall under the social media ban, especially... It might not, but I think that they would also benefit from bringing a high level of regulation to who's accessing their platforms.
And could you also explore what can you expect as the ban comes into action? What will be the initial reactions and what we can preempt and what we can manage?
So this is what I do day in, day out. I speak in schools and run workshops through local governments and not-for-profits about what young people, what parents can expect and how they can start to prepare for the ban. So the earliest it could possibly be is December 2025. That means that we have, at the moment, still more than 6 months to get kids ready for the earliest possible date. My philosophy really comes from those positive aspects, the positive ways that young people use social media. We need to find a way to build those up offline to support young people to lose what is actually a really big part of their life. We want to make sure that they're still connecting with their friends, that they have an outlet for their creativity and that they can access support systems. So when I speak to schools, when I speak to parents and in local governments, I talk about identifying what does your child like using social media for? What are the good things that they take away? How can you support them to have those in the real world? I encourage parents to be thinking about tech use habits at home, thinking about how to create a space where young people feel like they don't need their phone, and thinking about how to go about having these conversations in a way that empathises with the young person. How would you feel if you were told that you could no longer have social media tomorrow?
Challenging, yeah, for sure. I think I think it'll be a difficult conversation to be had for what reasons. For example, my access to social media is only professional. I'm only on all channels. I don't have any personal profiles at all anywhere. It's all professional profiles and it's for only professional purposes. And my professional depends on my social, so that'll be a challenging conversation.
And so for me, where I have both, I have personal and I have a business set. If I was told that because of where I lived or my age that I would no longer be able to access social media, I'd be angry. I'd be frustrated, a little bit grateful, little small part of me would be like, oh, thank God you've taken this away from me so I don't have to keep policing myself. But first of all, I'd be angry and frustrated and I'd want to know why. And that's what the young people are feeling like. That's what students ask me all the time. Why is this happening? So as the adults that are facilitating this and who will bear the brunt of the fallout, we need to be talking about and educating young people on why it's happening. They already kind of know. If you ask a young person what are the bad parts of social media, they'll be able to tell you about the cyberbullying, the exclusion, the harmful content. They know that. But being able to recognise that and still grieve that they're going to lose a big part of their life, how they've developed their identity, how they hang out with their friends, is going to be really important too. To be able to still have that connection with your young person and to make sure that they feel like they're going to be supported through what could be a very difficult transition for them.
On conclusion, if you can share, what do you think parents should be interacting, what conversation they should be starting having now, if this is happening in the next 6 months? What topics they should be covering in the conversations with the young people, with the kids?
My advice would be to be curious. I would ask questions, ask open questions that start with who, what, when, where, why. Maybe try and avoid the why, because that can often be a little bit of like, why are you doing this? But what? What do you like about social media? What are you going to miss about social media? What do you use it for? And then once you've got some information, you've been curious and you've put your thoughts about what they use social media for aside, and you've got that raw data, then you try and have that constructive conversation where you can work with them to figure out, well, what support do you think you'll need? what can we do to take that positive thing that you use it for? Okay, you use it to connect with your friends. How can we bring that offline when you do eventually lose access to the social media? That's easier said than done.
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about teenagers who just say one-word responses.
Yeah.
But I'd persist with it and try and model that behaviour as well. You could even say, look, I've noticed that I'm on social media more than I want to be. Let's all work on it together and try and reduce our screen time by 10 minutes a day. Start really, really small with any change that you want to make so that then it feels more achievable and like you've got a little win under your belt already. So my advice would really be to be curious and try and listen without judgment and to try and get the best outcome for your kids. Let them know that you're doing it to try and help them, and hopefully they'll let you in and you'll be able to come up with a solution together.
Thank you. Thank you, Paris.
Thank you so much for having me.